All right. Let's look at this task list project. I'm gonna go ahead and download these materials. And this is a good project. I like this project. It's something that if you're an analyst and you do work in Excel, this is the type of project that you will see in the workplace. This is actually a very professional type project, and that you're going to have a lot of different Excel files you're working with that you're going to have to manipulate. And so I think I like it for that reason. I think this is actually a very good test of what it's like in the real world working. Made a folder here called task list, and I'm going to drag these materials into here. I can extract the task list materials and take everything out. Delete these two files, these two folders I should say, and this is everything we should have. There you go. Let's open up these instructions. What does it say? This project includes one Excel file. Let's look at this. We've got one Excel file called task list. That's right. This is the list we will be updating. This Excel file lists all of the outstanding tasks, and we'll need to update this list using submitted and confirmed tasks. All right. So this is the task list, and we're going to be updating it with these two files right here. Okay, so this has all of the tasks. Let's see, where are we at? This has all the tasks we'll be updating and submitted. These are all of the tasks submitted over the last year. So for a 2019 September 1st file, it'll have September 1st, 2019, and a year prior to that, September 1st, 2018, all of the tasks submitted in that time. We have the confirmed tasks, and these are all the tasks that have been reviewed for confirmation over the last year. Okay, so after a task is submitted, it is then confirmed. And so that is what we will see in those two files. Let's see, let's open that up. We don't need that anymore. Don't need that. Submitted. Okay, so this is what our submitted looks like. I can see that there's multiple companies in here for each row. Confirmed. It's in a different format, which is certainly to be expected. And yes, in these tasks, they have all the companies broken out onto different lines. The parent company has many subsidiaries, each of which must submit a proposal each time they would like to undertake a large task. This project focuses on managing the list of these proposals. The task list keeps a lot of information about all these tasks, all of which is sourced from two reports: the submitted report and the confirmed report. These reports do not have the exact same fields and are not in the same format, adding to the complexity and difficulty of this project. Ooh, spooky. Here are all the task list fields and what they mean. The task number, this guy right here. This is the code assigned to the task when it is submitted for review. A task can encompass multiple companies, so the task list can have multiple rows for each task number. Right. This one here is 2 companies. This one's only 1 company. Gotcha. Final task code, similar to task number, but this code is assigned after a task has been reviewed. If the task is still pending, this field will just be NA. Yep, makes sense. These are approved. These are still pending, so it's NA. Group number, it's the ID of the group. Okay, cool. Line of business for the indicated company. Banks, broadcasting, commercial banks, which isn't in the banks group for some reason. Company number. And company, this is the name of the company. That's the name of the company. If the task applies to multiple companies, each company in the task is given its own line. Task description, description of the task. Troll nonsense. Total budget, total budget, wow. Total budget. Okay. a task shares a total budget and it's just spread out across the different companies. Effective start date. Date task is scheduled to start. Okay. Status. Review status of the task. When a task is initially submitted, the status is pending. Once a task is reviewed, which we will then see in the confirmed tasks report. Once a task is reviewed, the task will appear in the confirmed okay, it just says that. In addition to the submitted report, and the status will be decided. Submission date. Date the task is submitted. The list is ordered by submission date, with the most recently submitted tasks being at the top. Okay. Date row is entered. This is updated every time we insert new rows into the list, with the date of the report being the value we use for these new rows. Okay, so this new report is September 1st. So if we were to insert new row, it would be September 1st. Makes sense? Date row is updated. Sometimes a task can be both submitted and reviewed before we get a chance to put it into the list. In this case, the record of the task will not be updated. Okay, so when we put a record into here, if it's already been, say, approved before we put it in the first time, once we put it in here, we'll never need to update it again. But typically a new task is inserted that is still pending, and we will have to update the record later to reflect the final decision on the task. When we update the records, we will use the date of the confirmed tasks report as the value for the update records. Okay, so let's go ahead and update this. So this task list, it already has a bunch of tasks, and then we have two files. We have a submitted, so we need to put the submitted lines in here, and then we need to update all of these lines with the confirmed task list. So I'm going to move this to the submitted. I'm going to move this into the workbook, because when I work on a project, the first thing I like to do typically is keep a lot of the sheets in one workbook. That way I can work on them at the same time and they're grouped in the same place. So when I save, I can come back to all of them. So let's see, I have these here. I'm just going to color them. Let's pick a fun color. Yeah, I've seen funner. Whatever, it'll work. So we need to find which of these tasks, because this is the sub, these are submitted, which of these tasks are not already in this task list. Pretty simple. We can just match on the task code that's already in here, and if there's no match, then it's new. So let's go ahead and juice up the percentage on this. All right, we're looking good. Task list. It's our task list. This is what we need to be updating. But right now we're just going to be looking for matches on this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put in my column of stars. I'm going to Control N so I can go all the way to the last cell on the worksheet. Adjust the row width, then I'm going to make it green. Alrighty. I don't know if I really need to see the tracking number right now. Okay, so these task number and final task codes, if they're approved, they already have the approved final task code already in there. And if it's just the starting task number, it doesn't have the final task code, then it doesn't have the slash in it. Okay, so let's go ahead and break that into two columns. I'll just go ahead and call it task number, and I'll call that final task code. Seems pretty self-explanatory. The task number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we'll do a left 7 to left 7. You know, probably a better way to do it is just to find the dash in there. Left and we're gonna find the slash in this. That'll make it much more robust, just in case there's a long task number in there. We're gonna do an if error. So if this error is out because there is no slash, then just take the number. I don't know if there are extra spaces or if I'm doing the string trimming, string cutting right, so I'm just going to trim it. All right. Absolute references on the column. Now for the final task code, we want right, we want the length of this minus the find, and then if it's an error, then we're just going to say blank. So these don't have final task codes, this one does, so it gets AP648572. P648572. All right, that looks like that's working. Let's go ahead and see if any of these are in the task list. In task list. Typically how I like to check is, that's if error, if match. How I'm going to do this is if this task number is in the task list. So I'm matching the task number on this list of task numbers on the task list. So if it matches, I'm going to say 1. And if it doesn't match, if it's an error, because if there's no match in this list, it'll error out because there is no match. So if it is an error, I'm going to say 0. At this point, I use it so often that it's like second nature to me to write an if error, if match, but you can find your own way to find if something is in a list or not. Okay, so these ones down here look like they're in the list. Where does it stop? Let's see, does it have an average of 1? Yeah, count to 47, sum of 47. Above that, count to 14, sum of 0. Okay, so these 14 aren't in the task list yet. Let's see, this one, this approved one, and then all of these ones that are just submitted above it. And the final task code is in the list. And then we'll be using this to see what we need to update. So if this doesn't have a final task code right here, it could help if I go to the top. If it does have a task number, but it doesn't have a task, and it doesn't have a final task code, then we are going to need to update it. So we're going to need to come here and do a date row is updated. So that's, and I'm going to change that to B. Okay, so all of these down here, yeah, 32 of 32. This task was already approved, but this one wasn't yet. Some of the tasks in there have already been approved or denied, but not all of them. So we will go ahead and, because this one is already in the task list, but it doesn't have a final task code, that means these need to be updated, is what that means. Okay, looking good so far. So I'm going to add 2 more columns, add to task list, and then update in task list. So we have to update these tasks or add to tasks. And so we know we need to add if this is equal to 0. So if it's equal to 0, then 1, else 0. Pretty straightforward. We update the task list if and this, if this is equal to 1 and this is equal to 0, then 1, else 0. So let's see. So these 11 look like they need to be updated. Why is it matching blanks? Should not be matching blanks. Okay. So it looks like if it's a blank, then there is out, so we need to make sure it's not a blank, because we don't want to update it if there is still no final task code. And this does not equal blank. 7. That looks much better. There we go. These 7 are what we wanted. All right. Gonna highlight these. Now we have a list of what we want to add to the task list and what we want to update in the task list. Very good. So let's go ahead and start a new list. Okay. We have a list here of task numbers and final task codes that we need, but we're going to need a lot of these because I think all of these, in fact, are in the task list. So we need all of these columns, and so to help with the VLOOKUP, I'm just going to bring in this one right here. And for the new, one thing I could do is I could just filter on 1, so I have these 14 rows, and I could just copy these in right here. That is one way to do it. Just to get fancy, just in case you're that type of person, let's make this tool something that we can use over and over again, and it's not going to take much of our time at the workplace. And this will also help reduce mistakes. So I'm going to write me a formula. So I'm going to come in here, and once again, this is extra credit. There's no real reason to do this, just to update this once. Is I'll just put in a sum for new. I'm going to need to do the same thing with the update when we start updating them. So I'm going to make 2 columns, do a sum of this, but I'm going to lock the top one. Oh. I'm going to lock the top one. And that will do it to where it'll drag down the sum down to its current row. So it'll start here and it'll drag it down. For this row, it'll drag it down to here. For this row, it'll drag it down to here. As you see, I can do it again. 4. So this makes it'll keep going. 11, 14. Then there's a bunch of 14s right here. But how the lookup works is it only grabs the first one it finds that matches the lookup. It doesn't keep going down. So this will be perfect because it'll look for a 14 and it'll grab exactly what we want. And I can do the same with this. It's not being kind to me right now. Over there like that. And so it'll do the same thing. It'll drag down the sum until we find our first one that needs to be updated. Here's our second one that needs to be updated. So it's 1. The sum of these is still 1. Some of these is still 1. And then right here, the second one becomes 2. Pretty nifty way to do that. And that way, when we come in here, an index is pretty much a VLOOKUP, except it's a little bit slightly more complicated, but it doesn't need to start in the very first column. And so the array, that means just grab the table that you're going to be looking up. I'm going to be looking up right here from B to P. I'll make it B to Q. The row number, I'm just going to put 2 for now, but we'll come back to that because it's a little more difficult. And the column we're looking for the first column. So you see here, well, I mean, right now they're all looking at the same thing. If I went for this row number, then it'll say, because this function gets the row. So right now it's at 2. The row is 2, but if I come down here to A3, now the row is 3. This is a nice nifty little equation, but we don't want to look up the row. We want to match the row onto here, because we could do the same for the update and it would return all these zeros right here, and that's not what we want to do. So we want to match this row the row minus 1 because we want to be looking up for the first value this time since it's A2. And we want to be looking for first value. We do the row 2 minus 1. So that would become the first value. Look up array. I'm going to come back here, go right into P. We need to make this the same size as the original table we chose. So if it starts at 7 and ends at 68, this also needs to start at 7 and end at 68. And then of course exact match. That way, so we are looking for the first value. We're looking for number 1 inside of this. P7 to P68 should just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 14s all the way down. So that's what that array looks like. And we're looking for 1 inside of that. And the result of that is 1, or it's 2, I guess, because it's the second row. So we're getting the second row in the first column in this data set, and that would result in this. The same with this one. Oh, I drag that down. Now we are looking for the second match. The second match, so that would result in row 3. So we are going to go and get row 3, column 1 in this data set, etc., etc., etc. The reason why I'm doing this, I could even pull it down more, but it's just going to be errors. The reason why I'm doing this is because if we go ahead and next month we put in a new subfolder like this, we can just drag these equations down right here, and it'll do all the text manipulation, then all the if statements, and we can drag this down and it'll bring all of them automatically into this tab. We don't need to copy and paste them over. Anyway, so we spent another 10 minutes doing the same thing that we already had just by copying and pasting the values, which is just wonderful. And so by getting this, we can now look up all the things that we need in this task list. And so VLOOKUP, we're going to look up this value in this table, and I don't remember which one the task number was, so I'm just going to put 2. Let's see, what was it? Oh, the task number is all the way out here, J. Huh. Okay, so let's redefine this. So that's, you see 1 row, 10 columns. So we know that we need to put 9 and 10 for these next 2. So 9 for the task number. 10th column for the final task code. I'm going to delete these right here, they just look ugly. So for the group number, is that in here? Or group name and group number. So we're just going to do group name / number. This is the first column. This is what we're going to be looking up on. This is the second column. So looking up on that, we want the second column. And so from there we can go group name. We can just keep it the same as it was. Here, if it's in this, I'll give it a blue. Okay, and from this group name and number, we can go to group number by getting the number that's inside of the parentheses. So we want to look for the left parentheses. So, well, if it's equal to NA, then just have it as blank. It seems that for the NAs, I have a 0. It's NA, then it's a 0. Otherwise, I'll just keep these blank for now. Okay, so those two are blank, are 0. That's good. And for these ones, we want to look for the left parenthesis right there. I'm going to say right of this text. We're going to be finding finding a parenthesis inside of this text, the left parenthesis, and then that will get us, if say this is position 10, it'll get us position 10, and so we want the right of the length of it minus length of this 4 minus that. Let's see. You know what, we can just keep that. We'll just call that part 1. Then this will be the final one. Group number, so we'll change this back to black. And we'll say left of this, or we'll say if this is equal to 0, then 0, else left of this length minus 1. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and do a value as well. So it doesn't come out on the left side because it's a text. We want it on the right side because it is a number. We want the group number. Perfect. And hopefully the group won't need to be done in 2 stages. If it's NA, then just NA. Otherwise, we want the left, and we want to just find the left parenthesis, and then I think we can just subtract 2, because if it's a 10, we want to get rid of the parenthesis and the space between it to just leave these 8 characters. I think that should be it. Yep, looks pretty good to me. All right, company number. Is that something we can just look up? Give me an easy one. No, it is not. Why would it be? All right. Company name, company number. Except sub 2, you're probably 3. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, so that's all our companies. We're not going to be able to chop up these companies right now, row-wise. We're gonna have to do this in another sheet. And that's probably going to be pretty complicated, and so if that's where you're stuck on this, is trying to go from all of these companies in one cell to a list of these companies with the same information, then you're probably in 99% of people doing this, because it's something that would be a lot easier to do in Excel VBA, but we can do it. I wouldn't be showing you this project if it weren't possible to do. So I'm just going to remove these 2 for now. And I'm going to move on to task description. Here's the description. Budget, where are you at? You're at 7. You appear to be at 7. Comma you so you look a little bit better. Start date, is that in here? Okay, so the effective date is right there. We can look that up too. And you are, so 5, yep, that's 5. 5 columns in. And it's just returning the value, this effective start date after 1/1/1900, so we have to change this to a date format. Short date, looks good to me. Status, this is something that we are going to have to look up unconfirmed, because all of these will be pending because they're all new, but this one at the bottom, we're gonna have to get that from the confirmed. And the submission date, that'll just be the date of the report, which is 2019-9/1. 1/2019. Let's go ahead and lock this too. Okay, looking good. I'll say if this is blank and pending, otherwise 0. Pending, pending, pending. And then for the 0 down here, we're gonna have to look up the status on the confirmed sheet. You look up this guy. On the confirmed sheet, so these are all our final task codes. We want the status. It's 9 columns. So column 9, exact match. What are you? You are approved. All right. Good to see. And it appears that all we need now is the company name and the company number. All right, we're looking good. We're making progress. Things are happening. Things are happening. So we'll call that template new 1, because now we need new 2. On this one, we are going to have to get these companies out somehow. So the way we're going to do this is we have to figure out the number of companies that are in here to start with, so that we know how many rows to put in for template new number 2. So we're going to look, and looking at each cell, how can we tell how many companies are in this cell? And we can tell by looking at the companies that each company has a name and it has a number. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a column I'm going to make the column a little bit less wide. I'm going to call you company number, or I should say number of companies. Okay, you're stretched out a little bit. All right, number of companies. There we go. One thing we can do is each company has its number in parentheses, and each number only has one left parenthesis and one right parenthesis. So one thing we can do is we could just count the number of left parentheses. So how do we count the number of left parentheses in a cell? So we need to get the length of this. 130 characters. And then we need to subtract that from the length when we take out all the left parentheses. One way that we can take out left parentheses is with the substitute. So what we want is substitute. And says text. It tells you right here what to do. Substitute, we look for the text. So it says text right here. The old text, the text we want to replace, is a left parenthesis. The new text, we're just going to put nothing in its place. So what this is going to return is it's going to return this entire text without this left parenthesis and without this left parenthesis. See, so they're exactly the same, they just don't have the left parentheses right there. Now I'm going to copy this over here. Because I want the length of this substituted text, H2. So that would be 5, because as we can see, the length of this text is 49. This is 49 characters, whereas the length of this text right here, the one without the 2 parentheses, should only be 47. And that's how we are going to be able to tell how many companies there are here, is because we're going to count how many left parentheses we removed from text. Number of companies, 5 parentheses removed. There are 5 companies related to this task. So here we've got 5 companies here, 1 company there. Looks like it's working. And so we know how many cells we are going to need for each company. And so then there's the matter of, we need a way to look up each company after we get it by task so that we can put it into a list. We're going to need each task number on this list, and we're going to need this many task numbers. For these 5 companies here, there's going to be 5 NW11565 task numbers. Then this task right here is going to have 2 of these task numbers for each one of these companies. And so then next to each of these task numbers, we are going to put one of these companies. So we are going to need another column. company number, I'll call it for lookup. This column isn't supposed to make a lot of sense. It's only here for looking up. If you tried the cable provider tool project, then you saw me struggling with an approximate VLOOKUP, and you're going to see me once again struggling with an approximate VLOOKUP, because that's what we're going to have to do. Is for each row, much the same way we did right here, we're going to have to look up the row, and if that row is inside that range, then we want to print the corresponding number. And we're going to create the ranges right here. We're going to create the ranges by these numbers of companies. And so essentially what we want to produce is we want, for rows 1 to 5, we want this company number. And for rows 6 to 7, on this one, so 1 to 5, we want this company number. 6 to 7, we want this company number. And so we are going to have to do our VLOOKUP, because how it works is it looks for the highest number until it goes over. So we want this number to be 6, so that rows 1 through 5 will look for their corresponding row numbers. And for row 2, it'll say 2 is greater than or equal to 1, and it's less than 6. So we have to grab this one. And 3 will come do the same thing, 4 will do the same thing, 5 will do the same thing. Then once it gets to row 6, it'll say 6 is now less than or equal to this number. And this number will have to be, this is 6 and 7, so this one should be 8. So row 6 will come in here and it'll say it's higher than this, it's higher than or equal to this, not as high as this, so we want to grab this row right here. So 6 and 7 will do that, 8 will do that, I think this one will be 11, something like that. And so this is what we're going to have to create. Once again, I could go down here and add these rows up in my head, but I'm going to try and do this with a formula. And so I think we can just start with the number 1. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add this number to the number of companies. That will be 8. That'll be 11. That'll be 13 and 15 because those each have 2 companies. That'll be 37 because that is 1 company. And I don't know if we need another one, but I'm going to bring it down anyway. That'll be 41. I could probably just bring all these formulas down. I'm going to gray them out just so we know that they're not, not going to distract us, but they are there just for reference. Okay, so we're on our way to printing out all these companies. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have to look up the rows. So what we want is the task number. The final task code also, and we're going to have to match the row, and now row -1 because we're row 2 and we want to get the first company. No, that's not going to work. Okay, we need to index it so we can get a different column. We don't just want to return the number. Final decision, VLOOKUP. You look up the row -1, and that's why we put it right there, so that we can look up the task number in the final task code. All right, I'm getting it. So we're going to get all these rows. We're going to look up the second column because we want the task numbers. We're going to do an approximate match, which is true. All right, and so this will go and look up row 2, -1, which is 1. I'll look up the first company. This will be the second company. Wow, it's looking great. There should be 5 of these. Stellar. Should be 2 of these. Wonderful. And as we go down, I'm going to go till I hit the errors. These are all of the task numbers we need. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing right here for this, but this will be the third column. Whew. Now, we have the number of rows we need for each task. Now all we need is the companies. And so we're going to get the company row. And if we're going to go ahead and get this, we returned the first one. 1111 66 888. All right, it's the company row, but then we want to go ahead and add our current rows to this. Oh no, we're not going to return this company row. We want to actually get, what do we want to get? We want to get this value right here. That's what we actually want. So we're going to have to look up, what's that, 9. And then that can't be D. What's that got to be? J? Much better. All right. So now we have the company rows, but then we need, what am I doing? Is this not the most complicated way to do this in the world? I'm just going to go count if range. So it's an adjusting range, and I'll just do this. Boom. Boom. Hey, hey, look at that. Row 2. Row 5. Row 1, row 2. Row 1, 2, 3. Oh, I love it. All right. Moving on. Moving on. Company name, company number. So we're going to have to break these out by comma. Okay, now at this point, this is probably going to be the easiest point of this, and we're just going to look up the company name and number that we had on the last sheet. Look it up, look it up. 7 columns, exact match. Looking good, looking good. All right, and then at this point, we want the position of the opening parentheses. Because that is how, as we determined on the last tab, we determine which company it is. Because each company has a left parenthesis. And, or I should say, the find functions we should use so many times works great if there's only one character that we're looking for, or we're only looking for the first character. But if we're looking for a character that appears several times, such as in these cells, there are several left parentheses in each of these, or at least there can be. This one, there's only one left parenthesis. There can be several left parentheses, so what we need to do is a fancy find substitute. In this one, we use the substitute to get the number of left parentheses that were in here by just removing the left parentheses. Now we're going to have to do something where we substitute the left parenthesis for a character that's not already in there. And then when we go and find that character, we will then know the position of that specific left parenthesis. It's important to know the position of each of these left parentheses because once we do that, then we will be able to chop up each of these companies into their own cells. So let's go ahead and do that. And the company that we are going, or sorry, not the company, the character that we are going to be replacing in lieu of a left parenthesis is we want to use something that we know is not going to be in there. And one thing that's common to do when working with a substitute in Excel in this instance is we're going to put in a character that isn't on the keyboard. And I'm going to use a non-breaking character, which is character 160. There's lots of different ASCII characters out there that you can substitute in. In this case, I'm just going to use this. It doesn't really mean anything. We're just replacing it so we can go find it in this very same function. So we're going to find this non-breaking character in the substituted text. For this text, we're going to substitute the left parenthesis in for the non-breaking character. And you see this very last argument in the substitute says instance number. And for this instance number, it says we are going to be looking for a specific left parenthesis. So if you say you want the number 1, for instance, it'll get the first instance of the left parenthesis, or it'll get this left parenthesis right here. If you say 2, it'll skip the first one, it'll find the second left parenthesis and substitute it. And the third one, it'll find the third left parenthesis. So for this case, we want it to be variable because we have 5 different ones. So we are going to use our nice little company row field right here. And it says 1. So we are going to use the company row field to specify. Boom. Left parentheses at position 12. The second one is at 34. The third one is at 76. And we can continue that all the way down. Now, and that is looking marvelous. That's exactly what we wanted to see. And then from there, it shouldn't be too difficult to the company name and the company. Company name and the company. And so over here, we're going to use this, and we're going to say the left of this by this many. And the company number is 4 characters long. It is 4 numbers. So I'm going to say +4. Looking pretty good. Now all we need to do is get rid of the rest of that. And we're going to do that with a right. And then we just want the right 4 characters. Easy peasy. And we can pull that down. Different company number for each. Marvelous. And if we had a list of companies that we could look up on, we might not even need to do this, but we don't have a list of companies and we're gonna have to do this by hand, aren't we? So this one, unfortunately, is not going to be quite as short and beautiful as this, but it'll be short and beautiful enough. And so for number 1, this is simple enough. We're just going to do a left of this for this many characters. And right there, we already have the company name. And I could probably shorten that down to get rid of the left parenthesis in the space with a simple -2, so 12 minus 2, so it'll only get the left 10. Beautiful. Now that only works if this is company row number 1, because if we drag it down, it's going to get that. So we are going to have to do an if this is equal to 1, then just a simple left d2e2. Otherwise, if it's more than it, then we are going to have to do subtraction. So we're going to start with this same text right here. And then once we are there, we're going to get the right of this text. And the right of this text is going to be of length this number minus the number directly above it. The first is Shupko. Then I went Home Nick Inc. And it looks like I've got a lot of extra characters here. -6. 10. Hey, does that work? Oh my goodness, I think we found something. Oh, look at that. We did it. All right, it's all the company numbers, all the companies. Whew, and that was probably the most difficult part of this project. If you're following me on that, then you are totally set. And it's all downhill from here. Okay, so if I just go, and then I can do an official new tab. I mean, it is new in the sense it's, we just put it in, but also new in the sense that these are all of the new tasks that we'll be putting into our task list. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these nice blue columns up that we had earlier. We don't need these. We don't need these, but we do need the company and the company name. Company name and the company. Company name, company, right? Is that right? Company number and company, is that what I have? No. Increase the size of that. All right. And for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to go ahead and copy all these in. Copy both of these in. You can go ahead and do that fancy formula that I was showing you earlier. You know it, it's really not that much trouble. Let's just go ahead and do it. Oh, it was literally the exact same amount of work. Oh, what am I doing in my life? Okay, that should be 3. There we go. And then from there, we need to look up all of this stuff based on the task number. Well, you can go ahead and I'm gonna, let's B to D, but we want to change that from, yeah, so I'm just gonna have to go and do it. On this one, just gonna have to grab all of these. The row number is just gonna be the row. Oh, oops, not D to E, I want F to G. F to G. Column number is just gonna be 1. Oh, now that I look at this, this should be company number. And the same for this, except this is going to be column 2 in this index, in this array that I grabbed. Well, let's go ahead and lock this top row. Bring all those down. All right, look at that. Individual company numbers and companies on each row. Very excellent. And for these are just going to be simple V lookups. I'm going to be looking at this on the table array right here in template new, except this is going to be nice because we can just do a sick thing called a match for the column. So we're going to match this one that I'm up above, and I'm going to pull that across all of these. And then I'm going to do exact matches on both. Then as you see, we can just do it like that and it'll give us all of those. It'll go fill them all in because it goes and not only does it look up the row based on the task number, but it also looks up the column based on what we were calling the column label. It's very cool that we can do that. This is one of the reasons why Excel is so cool, is because you can do cool stuff just like that. And there's a lot of creative things you can do in Excel. Submission date, we want the same exact format for this one. And there we go. That is our new list right there. We're pretty on this. I would go as far as say we might be like halfway, maybe a little bit more, done with this project. That's all the news. Now all we need is the updates. Continuing on, we are going to put in an update, task list update. And this is going to have all of the task numbers that we are going to use to update the task list. And I'm going to go and I'm going to copy this same formula we had. Except the difference is I'm not going to be taking from P, I'm going to be taking from Q. I want the updates. Q, Q, boom, boom. And if I just go a page down, there we go. I've only got these 7 to look at. There they are separated into their task number and task codes. And then the only thing that changes for these should be the status. So we need to look up the status based on the final task code. Status. Based on this task code, we need to go into the confirmed, look up 9 columns. So get all of the data, go 9 columns, exact match, approved. Tab color, I'm going to make that blue because these are the 2 that we're going to use to update the task list. Yeah, this is the task list we need right here. This is the task list that we are actually trying to update. I'm going to save this as task list solution part 2. And so for this solution, this is what we had to start with. This is what we were given at the start of the problem. And now we are going to go, and I'm going to copy in the values from the 2 files we just worked on. Task list solution. There we go. So we're going to need these files. And this one, I'm going to call you update. And we are going to need this one. I'm going to call you new. We're going to have to get all of this good stuff. It's not, okay. There's no formulas in there. There are formulas in here. There are. Need to make those values. Good. They're all values now. Okay. At this point, we need to update them. And then I'm going to call you task list working. And so for this one, I'm going to put in my column of asterisks that I love so much. I got this column of asterisks. I never did it until a coworker of mine named Lauren did it in all of her workbooks, and I stole it from her. So if you're listening, Lauren, thank you. This is the new status after the update, and so I'm going to say VLOOKUP, and I'm going to look up this task number. Over here. Well, we have to do the final task code and the status. And so I'm going to VLOOKUP this guy right here on the update, column 2, exact match. And for this one, this is going to be column 3. And there should be a lot of errors in there. That's about right, because most of these task numbers are not in our small little update table. So we are going to do if error, then just take the one that's already there. Or if error, then just take this one. And pull the same thing over here, but change this to the third column, of course. I want the status right here. So those should remain the same, but then this should stay pending and NA. Perfect. So if we pull that down, merge and center, make it green. Nah, green sucks. Make it orange. This is what we're going to update. Now I'm just going to make a copy of this one. This here, but I'm going to put it in front of this at the very beginning. I'm going to call you task list. And then I'm just going to make these changes right here. I'm going to copy all of you. I'm going to put you right there for the final task code. Put all the values in. I'm going to put all the statuses in. I'll just do this again now, won't I? So this one I want the day the row was updated. And instead of this, I just want an if match. If match. I'm going to match A3 C to C. Don't need the column number. A 1 else M3, which is the date. Okay. Oh, what am I doing? Okay, so if it fails, if there's an error, then I'll just say if this is blank, blank, otherwise M3. There. So now those stay as dates. Great, great, great. And instead of 1, we want it to be the date that it was updated, which I removed it, but it should be date, year is 2019, month is 9, day is 1. That is the date our report was ran. Date row was updated. There we go. Merge. We're going to go ahead and drop these in here as values. So these ones were updated as of the date of the report, 9/1/19, but the rest of these will go on as continuing the date that they had. So this was updated. The status has been updated now. Are there any pendings in there? Yeah, there's a couple in there. Not too many, but there's about to be a whole bunch more because we're about to add in the rows from the new. Why is it 9-1 for submission date? That shouldn't be the case. No, it is not. I did submission date wrong. Submission date should not be that. Submission date should be filing date, I'm guessing. I'm guessing that's what it's supposed to be. So it's 4. Should be 4. There we go. Okay, so submission date should then flow into there. This does. And that should then flow into there. Yes, so at this point, I'm going to copy everything here. Just going to copy all those rows. Just going to get rid of those working columns on the side. We don't want them anymore. We just want the final list. I'm going to go ahead and copy, and I'm going to insert all of these right there. And that is looking terrific. I'm going to go and I'm going to copy the formats all up there, most notably changing what the budget looks like. And then I've just got to make the date entered 9/1. Oh, wow. And that's it. We finished it. What a project. I'm going to go ahead and tab color that purple. I'm going to insert, I'm going to call that working. Terrific. That was it. Congratulations if you were able to get that, because that was quite a doozy. Like I said, these are the types of projects that you're going to see in an office, because a lot of people, they keep their data in Excel files and they share their data through Excel. If you're starting out, this is a great project to learn. It's good hands-on experience. I hope you were able to get it. I'll see you in the next project or test.